Hello? Yes. All right. So it's instead of Michelle's kicking this off, it's me. And then she'll come eventually, and then she'll get here. All right. So a couple things. I just want to talk about a couple things, and then I'll ask some questions. But those of you in the South Wing, the last few days haven't been too good because you had no air, you've had no heat, and you had no elevator A. But as of about 10 minutes ago, you have both again. There was a part that went bad in the elevator, and that part is no longer made. And it creates some problem with getting the part. So we took the part from one of the health center kitchen elevator. So elevator A is working again. There was also a problem over the weekend with the heat in South Wing. That is corrected. The halls, right. So although the heat never went down below 65 degrees, so it was cooler, but it wasn't like, in other words, I could have gotten somebody here to fix it quickly and paid a lot of money for an emergency call, but it was 68 degrees. So I didn't. But now it's fixed. And I'm waiting on any day the pool pack will be delivered. The unit that goes on top of the roof that heats the pool water and conditions the room. Any day that's coming, and that'll be done. We just don't have a day, but I'm expecting sometime next week. Questions? Oh, wait, one other thing. Ice on the cars. All right. Sunday morning, a contractor called me, and their contract calls for clearing the cars. But on Sunday, the cars were covered in ice, not snow. And he called me to say that if he did it, he's going to end up scratching a lot of cars. And also later Sunday, the temperature was going up to close to 40 degrees and rain. So I decided to not do the cars Sunday morning. And due to the amount of ice on the cars, we're getting to them, but it's slow. And our overriding concern is to not scratch cars. And so, like we've been saying from, forever, but especially since from Sunday, if anybody has to go somewhere, call us and we'll make sure your car is cleared and ready to go. But the reason we didn't do the cars on Sunday was because I just didn't want to risk scratching cars. So that's why it wasn't done.
So that it could be fixed, cleared off. Oh, I filled out a note to have my car cleaned off.
Right.
And I looked out yesterday after they had done it, and all that had done is slid the roof of ice off on the front. There's no way that I can get from the sidewalk to the car. It's over a hump of ice. They did a piss poor job on clearing off my car. Excuse me, French.
Well, I appreciate that. Let me look into it. It shouldn't be. No, it should be. The idea is that your car should be, cleaned properly. Right. But this storm is the amount of cold weather is not usual. So, I mean, we've had a lot of cold weather and it's very hard to get all of it. But if we do some of the car, it should all be done. Yeah. Any others? And I'm only going to be up here another 5 minutes, then hand it to somebody else because I know Michelle wants a bunch of things to talk about.
If you can't get parts for the elevator, do we need new elevators?
No, we don't. There is a big but the elevators that we have are over 15 years old now. And we are not the only people that have these elevators that the parts aren't made for. So there are manufacturers that make the parts that Otis doesn't make anymore. And so the only issue is, it's like if you have a car, you have a Chevrolet, you can get Chevrolet parts, or you could get Duralast or, other brand parts that would also work. Most of them are fine, but you don't want to get like Bob's Discount parts. You don't want to get like the cheap stuff that's going to break. So we can put other parts in, but we just need to make sure that those parts are of the same specifications and quality as the original manufacturer parts.
I read in the news lately about tariffs. How and if is this going to affect the renovation?
That would be a better question for Dave, who will be here. Yeah, he's here. All right. Two more questions, then I'll pass it off.
Just a quick question, and maybe I'm out of date now, but yesterday after I cleaned my car, there were huge chunks of ice all around it, well, particularly on one side.
Right.
And I asked one of our poor maintenance workers desperately working on cars about a shovel, and he didn't have one. I would have shoveled that stuff off, but out of the road.
First, my answer is no. I don't want you shoveling anything. That will do that. And the other is, I think Paul and Mark are out there yesterday, and they have access to whatever equipment it is they need that they know and believe would do the job the best it can. So in other words, the amount of ice that's in between some of the cars, a shovel isn't going to help you. But if a shovel would have helped, they have access to them. We have plenty of them. So, whatever they need. But like I said, without a doubt, right now, there is a lot more ice out there than we should have. There's a lot more ice that we can just easily get rid of. It's bit by bit. And again, if anybody has to get access to their car, do not hesitate to call concierge. It could be, if for some reason you want to go to Krispy Kreme at 2 a.m, I don't care. Just call and we'll get you to your car and get your car cleared. Just bring us back Krispy Kremes. That's all.
Tom,
All right. One more question and then I'm passing it up. Yes.
there is this guy who walks down behind the cottages from time to time, usually late morning. He clearly belongs there because, well, I don't know that, but he's been there several times. And he's not wearing any Woodland Pond insignia. And I'd like to know who this guy is, because the rumor is he's your guy.
Orkin guy. The Orkin guy goes down he goes behind the cottages. Oh, then if he goes, that sounds like a Rob Dunn question. Oh, he's not here. I'll go tell him that numerous people had some serious questions and he wasn't here for. Yeah, about the Orkin guy. All right. Yep. All right. Thank you. Next is Dave.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Okay. I'm Dave Roberts. I'm the Capital Projects Manager for Woodland Pond. I'm talking about everything to do with the expansion. I'm going to keep it short, brief, because I know Michelle has things to talk about. The first thing is, well, I'll actually address the question in the room first, which is about increase due to tariffs. When we sign a contract with the general contractor or our construction manager, they hold a contingency sum, and it's for all these unknowns. And when we sign a contract, they'll set aside, it might be 5%, it might be 7% of the entire budget for contingency. There may be design changes that we decide to make because as we see the project advancing, we notice things that we want to add. But in that that contingency sum will also cover unforeseen increase in materials or specific labor costs. Now, but having said that, so that contingency sum will cover unforeseen increases in materials. Having said that, I prefer to deal with what we know and not what might happen. There's a billion things that might happen. So at the moment, we don't foresee an increase in the cost of materials. We'll deal with it when it happens. But that's why we have a contingency sum in our contract with the construction manager. Couple of things coming up. I know I've been talking about this on my Friday talks, but we're putting together a logistics group. Is to discuss all the logistics of the renovation, how we maintain all the services and amenities to you as we go through this process, and what it means to have clean air and quiet and all those good things. So we do have a group. Tomorrow I'm going to send out, start to line up the first meeting for that. If you're interested, this is kind of your last chance to get on that group, but we will be meeting on a regular basis throughout the process to make sure that we're considering all your concerns, with regard to the logistics of the renovation. The other thing that I've been talking about is the interior design group. I've been meeting with the Christine from MDP about getting the samples sent to us. I'm talking to her again this afternoon, and once I have a date when everything will be here, I'll send out an email to those that are on the interior design focus group so that we can meet and discuss those things. I hope that it will be towards the end of next week. That's my goal. Just to address a little rumor that I heard from the rumor mill, the Erman property we're still considering that for expansion. What we're dealing with is a change in the New York State wetlands laws. And there's a lot of discussion about that. I've been in a couple online seminars. And even though the change in the regulations is out there, there's still uncertainty about the implications of that and how that's going to be implemented through the DEC. So we're coordinating with LRC, our Ken Casamento, our civil engineer, who we have a lot of faith in. And as I say, attending seminars to better understand that. But that's probably, maybe what you've heard. It's in process. We're also lining up our ecological expert, Michael Fishman, who'll be looking at vernal ponds and doing research through the spring. So that's where that is at the moment, but we're still very much interested in the Erman property. We know we have to go through a process. That's not new news. That's always been the case for that land because we know there's wetlands there and there are restrictions about how we can build on them. That's all I got. Oh, question. Yes.
Thank you. Wonder if we could have some diagrams of what's happening and the hoped for timelines so that we could see the changes that are planned right here in this room.
Okay, we do have things on Connected Living. I do need to update the Connected Living plans, but in terms of a timeline, I'll put that out as well, and we'll figure out a good place to put to put something up on the wall.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, yeah.
Not everybody uses Connected Living.
Sure. Okay.
Thank you.
Microphone coming your way.
Thank you. Past experience with big recon jobs. We've been able in the past to save money to lock in on any of the construction materials that we knew would typically go up. Is that something to be considered here?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question about that.
If we know, for example, with the cost of, I don't know, aluminum going up, I've had experience where we know we're going to need so much, so we could go to the vendor, lock in the price with, a certain percentage down and save money.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. It's also, is applicable to long lead items, like a lot of the HVAC equipment that we'll be getting and so on, and to order those things early. So that's a point of negotiation with our construction manager, is to identify those things early and to order them, as you suggest. Yep, definitely. That's it? All right. Who's next? Shannon's shaking her head.
Hello, everybody. Phil Cavallo, Director of Dining. This one is going to be short and sweet. The main focus that we have today is to introduce our new executive chef, Lindsay Atchinson. I will call her up in a moment. Any questions regarding past menus or upcoming menus, hold for Jared if you could. Again, she's new. She's still getting a lay of the land. Questions about her past, her career, her cats, those are all welcome. But other than that, I ask that we just make this kind of brief and just an introduction for Lindsay. One piece that I do want to talk about is the new reservation timing system that we've been talking about forever. So, sorry, I thought that was towards me. We will be rolling out the new reservation system on Thursday, March 6th. So we were hoping to do it at the beginning of the week. We have too many reservations that have already been placed for Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And instead of calling y'all back and trying to rearrange, we're just going to open up the new system for Thursday. So tomorrow, when you get online to make your reservations, it will look different. You will have 15-minute time slots starting at 4:45 and going all the way till 6:30. We will be here on Thursday. I will be here. Tanya will be here. We'll all be here to ask or answer questions that you all may have. It's going to be seamless. It's going to be good. It's going to be fun. I promise. There won't be any issues. Very much so. Have to be. That being said, everybody, if you have questions about that, yep, Jared.
There's now a discount for the 650 and the 445 seatings. Is there going to be any discounts for any of the time slots?
We still need to iron that out. The reasoning for the discounts was because we knew that people didn't want to eat at the 6:15 slot, and we kind of booked out the 5:30. We have more options between 5:15 and 5:45 now than we ever have. We will discuss discounts on the earlier end and the later end of the reservations, but that hasn't been solidified just yet.
Phil, did I hear you say 615 or 650?
630. 6:30.
630, so we can eat 15 minutes later. Thank you.
Correct. Coming around.
Yeah, could you simply explain what that means when you said 15 minutes and then make a...
Yep.
That's very confusing. Could you explain it a little bit more explicitly?
So the reservations for dinner will start at 4:45. We will have 4 tables available at 4:45. Then we will have 4 tables available every 15 minutes from then on until 6:30. So at 4:45, you'll have 4 tables. At 5 o'clock, you'll have 4 tables. 5:15, there will be 4 tables. 5:30, and so on. So we actually go. That's the number of tables, not the number of people per table. So we will still be able to have a 6 top, an 8 top, a 10 top, those will all be included in the 4 tables per 15 minutes. You're welcome.
Thanks. Correct me if I'm wrong, but currently, if you show up at 4:45 or 6:15 without a reservation, they'll accommodate you up to a certain limit number of people. Will there be? Will you continue that practice? If so, at what time slots do you anticipate having that walk-in facility available?
We will offer walk-ins at every seating, space permitting. So if you walk in at 5:15 and somebody else had come in 5 minutes before you, we may have to push you until 5:30. But we will take as many walk-ins as possible, basically at every 15-minute interval. So you won't have to come back in 30 minutes or 45 minutes.
Thank you.
Jared, up here. Thank you.
Will it be the same procedure? We would just go to Ruth and say we'd like to eat at 4:45 or 5 o'clock. Same idea?
Same exact idea. And if the time slots are filled, she will offer you time slots as close to on either side of that as possible.
Is there still only a 2-week window to do the reservation online?
Yes, we still have it 2 weeks out. Right in front of you.
Is there any possibility of putting the available all week menu online at least once a week? So we could say print a copy and post it on the refrigerator, right? No, not the ones, not the week at the glance, the items that are, well,
the daily specials?
No, the ones that aren't, that are available all week. It's the one that you have embalmed in plastic on the.
Right. Jay, can you speak to that?
So the reason we don't do that right now is because that menu is always subject to change. So typically the items on those menus are ones that we don't already have in the building or have already planned on previously to get them in. Not that we're not planning on our menus, obviously, but that menu is always subject to change. 9 times out of 10, if there's a menu change happening that evening, it's to that menu, with the exception of yesterday on a cauliflower issue. But as we create new menus in the future, it's not without, it's not out of the realm of possibility to post that in online at some place. We'll talk about that whenever we get there.
What about the time slots for brunch?
Brunch is going to stay the same.
No reservations for brunch. No reservation. Oh, sorry, brunch.
Yep. Oh, okay. Last question, and then we'll introduce the new chef.
Are you going to try to increase the size of staff?
So with this new reservation system, we actually will need less staff. We're not going to get rid of anybody, but it will be a much more fluid service.
That's a danger.
Without further ado, Chef Lindsay.
Thank you for that warm introduction and a warm welcome from everybody at Woodland Pond. My name's Lindsay Atchison. I'm your new executive chef. I'm very happy to be here. And I know I've been trying to meet everybody that I possibly can. So there are some familiar faces, which is already pretty nice. But, I've spent over a quarter century in food service. I started working at 13. I'm almost 40, but with my sights set on pretty much becoming a chef and taking that as far as I can. So I'm still not done. There's still a lot of learning and a lot of, education in my future as far as being a chef. But I pretty much decided this is the path I was going to take when I was like 5. I don't know if anybody remembers the TV shows like Yen Can Cook or Great Chefs, Great Cities. this was like what inspired me. I went to my parents, told them what I was going to do, and they were like, okay. And I don't think they believed me at the time, but I pretty much stuck to my guns and stuck to that. So I started working as soon as I possibly could, as soon as I got an opportunity. And then after about 10 years, you know, being a line cook and prep and all that, I really wanted to get my formal education in this industry. So I went to a culinary school in Florida, and that was an interesting experience because some of my teachers there had only been cooking like 6 months. I don't know how they were able to become teachers. They had certificates as culinarians, and they were telling me to do some weird things when we needed to cook French food or Spanish food. And I was like, this is not a good education. So I applied to the Culinary Institute in Hyde Park. I got accepted. I managed to get up here, attend classes, and that was in 2010. Some things happened, life happened. I had to withdraw. I came back though. They said if I needed to do that, I had 7 years to come back. So being as dedicated as I am to my craft, I came back 6.5 years later. I got my degree in the savory side of things in culinary arts from the CIA across the river. And then from there, I really wanted to be positioned to, you know, be able to work in a facility like this or for a company like Sodexo. You know, our education is usually mirrored, you know, it's very textbook and it's usually mirrored after like, you know, quality companies like Sodexo where you're ever doing everything by the book. You know, there's lots of checks and balances and it's, you know, regulated and structured, and that's what I really appreciate. So I continued my education to get my bachelor's degree in hospitality management from the City University in New York. And I really started out wanting to be in a place like this. And that was almost 10 years ago when I really like started taking my education seriously. So I'm so happy to be here. I feel so lucky. I feel like I definitely won like the lottery or something. Because there's no place that I've seen in the last 26 years that even resembles, you know, what I've been experiencing the last couple of weeks at Woodland Pond. So that's all I really have to say. If you haven't, thank you. So yeah, I'm absorbing a lot. You know, there's a lot of information. It's a big job, but I'm ready for it. And, you know, I have a lot to learn, but, Jared and Phil have been great. Oh God, stop, why did you do that? Okay, I'm the proud owner of 3 well-adjusted, beautiful cats. They are the Boop Troop. Their names are Boopy, Moopy, and Doopy. And I never really set out, you know, to be in this position, but there's a thing called the Universal Cat Distribution System. And Boopy jumped through my window one night in the middle of the night around Christmas. And then I was like, we were best friends pretty much ever since. I was like, I need to get her fixed right away or she's going to have babies. Then, you know, that didn't work out. Then she was pregnant and I was like, well, I'll just get rid of the kittens and sell them. Then the night that she was having the kittens, I was like, the first one popped out and I was like, I'm a grandma. And I just like, and we've been together ever since. So that was like 3 years ago. And that's my whole life. And they mean the world to me. So that's it. Yes, I do talk about my cats a lot because I love them that much. And I think everybody in the kitchen pretty much knows that already. So yeah. Does anybody have any questions for me or?
I just want, excuse. I just wanted to say that I don't know what you personally cook, but the last 2 dinners, I have noticed a very positive change. Last night I had the fish. It's the first time in I don't know when that I have seen the fish not covered over with big crusty whatever breadcrumbs you use, and it was very tasty. And I said, oh my God, the executive chef is here. maybe we were really going to get good. Not that we haven't had good food, but there is a difference. And so I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you for saying that. I can't say, it's all a team effort in the kitchen, that's for sure. There's not one person, doing any one thing, and everybody's just collaborating and trying to make the best possible product,
We welcome
But thank you.
We welcome you, and just bear with us.
Okay, same here, please. I can't wait till the day I'm a pro and I have all the answers and I know exactly what I'm doing. But so I appreciate that.
I like to watch cooking shows.
Yeah.
And I like to see possibly a video or a film of you or your staff cooking a meal and, being brought on 1340. That would be really nice to see some of you
That
cooking.
could be cool.
Okay?
Yeah. I like that. That could be really fun for us too. Yeah, that would be awesome.
Among the three chefs too, you can have a
Yeah, we could do we could have like a dramatic, the bear scene or something. Somebody can pretend to get mad.
I want to second what Rhea said. The Valentine's Day dinner was superb.
I did.
Superb. More of that, please.
We're all working together, but I'm going to give Jared a lot of credit for the Valentine's dinner as well, because he came up with the menu. Then the kitchen staff, which is, and Phil, maybe. I'm sorry.
Sorry,
I'm not
Goose.
totally
Phil came up
involved
with the
yet,
menu
but,
too.
But then everybody came together as a team, to make it the best holiday meal they possibly could for you. So, but I appreciate that. But I'm not a one-woman show. I was brought in by a really strong team of really talented culinarians. So, thank you.
One more point.
Okay.
The Super Bowl pool really went over well, especially the food that was brought in by the home. Did I pronounce his name right?
The home? What?
Delon. I'm sorry, but the wings were great, and everything else that was supplied by the kitchen was loved by everyone. We really enjoyed it. Made the evening perfect, and it was a great affair.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing all this positive and great feedback. We appreciate it. Thank you very much. Yeah, warm welcome every day. Thank you.
All right. Hi, everybody. How's everyone? All right. So I've got a couple things I want to go through, just so you know the topics that I want to cover today. I want to talk a bit about the resident selection for the board process. I want to talk a little bit about project financing, and I heard Dave allude a little bit to the tariffs and some other questions that have come up, so I want to just reiterate a few things on that. I want to talk a little bit about the capital campaign and where that's at. And I want to start with rumors and suggestions, because you guys have been filling the box, which I love. So the first one, well, I have to read this one first. When rumors are read by Michelle in her weekly address, she takes some of the humorous ones as serious. I wonder if she is aware that many are created for laughs. Surely no one thinks that soap is okay in the hot tub. With that in mind, does she know that a certain resident used to write jokes for David Letterman and Saturday Night Live and have put some absurd ideas in the rumor mill? So I'll start with the latter. I did not know that there was a resident here that wrote jokes for David Letterman and Saturday Night Live, but I would like to audition for you. And I do know that the jokes are jokes. What some of you don't know about me is that my sarcasm is dry. So if you watch the videos closely, you'll see I'll do a little facial change or a little wink. That's the signal that I know that it's a joke. So next Tuesday, if I have rumors and you see me wink during the rumor discussion, I know it's a joke. The next one is, so some of these I can't tell if it's a joke or if it's a rumor. Is it true that Woodland Pond Apartments can no longer have carpet installed? Do we think that's a joke or do we think that's a rumor? Okay. People can have the flooring that they like. You can do whatever you want with your flooring, but our standard package of flooring that we're installing is laminate in the common areas and carpet in the bedrooms. But anyone is welcome to make changes to their carpet. You just have to coordinate that with maintenance. We'll get a quote for you, that kind of thing. So this one, I don't know if it's a joke either. If it is not a joke, please refrain from doing what I'm about to say. Could someone please explain to the relatively new couple that barefoot in the dining room is inappropriate? Barefoot. So if anyone's going barefoot in the dining room, new or old, please do not do that. Shoes and shirts required. What a surprise it was to hear that the new sign for Woodland Pond at North Putt Road entrance will be a spinning neon lit sign with a video showing Woodland Pond highlights. Hats off to whoever got that through the zoning board. So yes. Yes. Did you see the wink? All right. The next one actually is a perfect tie-in and just coincidental. It says, so we were supposed to have 2 new members on our board. The residents have not seen a single word about the credentials of those who offered themselves for the position. Now there are mumbles about starting all over. What gives? Surely we should see who thinks or thought they were qualified. So we are currently going through the first time that we have had to anticipate replacements of our resident board members since we started welcoming resident board members to the board. So the last time we went through this was going to be 9 years ago in this coming June. It's been a long time. When we went through it the first time, we only had 2, maybe 3 residents that were interested. So the bylaws were written in anticipation, and the board writes the bylaws. I want to be very clear. Everything I'm explaining to you is a board decision. It's very clearly outlined. I'm just the messenger. But the bylaws were drafted at that time with the thought in mind, we're not going to get a lot of people that are interested in being on the board. And we want the process to be driven by the residents, of selecting residents and putting them forth for consideration to the board. When the Residents' Council and the board announced that we were going to be replacing Dick and Ray because their terms are expiring, we actually got 9 residents that were interested, which was 3 times the number we expected. And the board had to really think about how are we going to deal with this. What they did was they asked us, and Lindsay helped facilitate the process. They asked any resident that was interested in putting themselves forward or another person forward. Initially, I think they all went through the Residents' Council, and then the pool got so big that the invitation was broadened. And I know there were people that submitted their applications and resumes to Lindsay directly. So any resident that put themselves in was included in the initial round. Okay. And what the initial round meant was if you indicated a desire to be considered, you were asked to provide a resume and a bio or a cover letter if you had one. Initially, that was step 1. The second was that every board member every prospective board member had to fill out a questionnaire that was prepared by the board. It was an electronic questionnaire. And everyone had to respond to that. If you didn't respond to that, you didn't get put through to the next round. Still, after that process, I think we still had 8 after that first survey went out. The survey covered questions like really getting into, and there were narrative abilities to put narratives in. It talked about things like your familiarity with the current operations of the board, your current participation in different committees and things like that, your past experience outside of Woodland Pond in board activities, past experience with any kind of not-for-profit or regulatory environments, asked the question about what's your primary motivation for wanting to be on the board, and maybe a couple of other things. I think there was 9 or 10 questions. And so with those things in hand, the board had a great opportunity to really objectively review people's responses, their resumes, and their bios. So everyone was evaluated using the same criteria by our governance committee. From there, because there was no specificity in the bylaws, the governance committee decided that they were going to ask the residence council for any feedback on the folks that were in the pool. So the 8 or 9 names were provided to the residence council. And as I recall, timing got a little funky on this, but I think it was the December residence council, not the January residence council. Somebody can confirm that for me. Okay, so it was the outgoing residence council. But at any rate, they were given an opportunity to provide specific feedback on the 9, positive or negative, and that then went to the governance committee. And based on those 9 responses from the residence council, the governance committee decided who they were going to put forward to the next round. No, actually, there was the meeting with all of them first, right? Okay, I'm sorry. I'm missing a step. Before anyone was eliminated, again, because I wasn't at these meetings, I'm just working off of what I understand. Lindsay was there as a minute taker and stuff. Ray and Dick wanted to have an opportunity to meet with all of the pool, the 8 or 9, to explain the responsibilities of a board member as a resident, and then answer questions. And I believe Chris Druin was there, our board chair, and it went on for quite a while. Wasn't it over an hour and a half long? Almost 2 hours. So as I understand it, again, I was not there, but Dick and Ray had all these folks in the room together. They explained some things from their own perspectives, and then did they open up for questions? And folks were able to ask questions and so forth. So that also then gave Chris Druin, who's the board chair, some insight into the people in the room. From there, the members of our governance committee provided feedback to each other and decided who they wanted to advance to the individual interview process. And I want to just stop there before I go on. Everything that I've described to now is mirrored when we recruit people from the community, with the exception of one thing. When we recruit folks from the community, meaning non-resident board members, we don't let people put their own name in. So you were all able to put your own name in, self-nominate, and there was no restriction on that. Any resident could have, any resident that wanted to should have. Every other step in the process, the resume review, the questionnaires, meeting with a group of existing board members, and then getting winnowed down for an ultimate vote, that's exactly what the board does with any prospective candidate from the community at large. So the process was exactly the same, with the exception, again, of the fact that residents could self-nominate. That is not allowed in the community, but we felt we wanted to cast as broad a net as possible. So ultimately, and this process has been going on for months. It initially started, discussions began in November. Applications were starting to be received in December, as I recall, December 13th or 16th. Then the survey went out. And the decision was not easy from what I understand. We only had 2 spots. And the reason for that is because the bylaws indicate that there are 2 required spots on the board for voting resident membership, and then up to 20%. So if our total board population went above 15, a 3rd resident would be added. Would be the 14th or 15th member, from what I understand. One thing that's come out of this, so at this point, my understanding is that the governance committee has recommended to the board for a vote the 2 candidates that they wish to see be granted these spots. The vote is underway, and it's an electronic vote, and I think that we'll probably have the results for that by the end of this week. What has become evident in this process is a few things. The bylaws, possibly of the Residence Council, but also of Woodland Pond, need to be clarify how this process should work better. Because in some ways, there were they currently allow leeway, and the board had to make decisions. But I know that the governance committee is going to be interested in talking to the residents council in particular about how they'd like to see this happen potentially differently the next time around. So we'll be looking for feedback on that. But suffice it to say, anyone could have put their name in the ring. Everyone was evaluated sight unseen initially, objectively, based on resumes, bios, and the survey questionnaires. Each person was subject, quote, to feedback from your elected residents council in a confidential manner. And then the board had the opportunity through Chris and Dick and Ray to talk with candidates, all of the candidates before the pool was winnowed down. And then it went to an individual interview process. So once those members are announced, the actual terms will begin the handoff will happen at the June annual meeting, is what I understand. But it's my belief that the board intends to begin onboarding the two people that are selected sooner so that they're up to speed by the time they're attending board members and asked to actually be voting members. And the other thing that the board has approved through a resolution at the last meeting is that there will be an opportunity for former board members to stay on as ex officio, emeritus board members. So they're non-voting, but they'd be able to stay on. So that will allow people that are, have termed out to stay involved. They just approved that change to the bylaws. So Dick and Ray, if they want to stay on, Chris Druin, his term is ending, Mark Shane, his term is ending, they would be able to stay involved. I'm sure they could attend meetings as they wish, but they wouldn't have a voting membership. So let me stop on that topic and take a few questions and invite anybody that has additional questions to please contact me. And anything I can't answer because I wasn't present at those governance committee meetings, I will forward to them.
9 years seems like a long time. Is the term going to stay at 9 years?
Most likely not. There's a resolution in front of the board to reduce it to 3 years, I think with the possibility of one extension, because it's currently 3 years with 3 extensions. One initial term plus 2 extensions. I think there's going to be a motion made definitely to reduce that, but I think it's going to be one possibly with 1 3-year extension or 1 3-year with 1 1-year extension. The other thing the board is looking at is staggering terms because right now Ray and Dick started at the same time. They served the entire time together. And you have to remember when we brought residents onto our board 9 years ago, we were the first CCRC in New York to do it. And there really wasn't a playbook. So we mirrored their membership off of what our board membership reads. Your membership is exactly the same, which is 3 3-year terms. I'm not sure if they're looking at that for everyone or just residents, but it's all under review. And the other thing that's good for you to know, if you don't know this already, is our board reviews our bylaws annually. So whereas some organizations just do it on an as-needed basis, our governance committee reviews the bylaws each year and then as needed brings forth changes to the board to vote on at the annual meeting. And I think the process of that keeps our bylaws very nimble and make sure that they're in keeping with what makes sense for the community at a given time, given any, global, regional, local, political sensitivity issues. And I think it's good. Other questions on that? Maria? Hold on one sec.
I wasn't clear in terms of after all of the candidates were seen and went through all the paper process and everything, 2 people have been selected that are going to be voted on, or more candidates?
So more candidates. There were originally 8 or 9.
Right.
Then the governance committee decided to interview a smaller group of that. And then from the smaller group that they interviewed in person, they select 2.
They select 2 and then they vote on that?
Yes. So the governance committee first votes. And if the governance committee agrees, then it goes to the full board to vote, to approve. So the governance committee is akin to like the nominating committee.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Other questions on that process? Okay. The next thing I want to just chat about quickly is related to the financing structure for the project. I want to do my best to encourage everyone in this room, to the extent that you can or want to please attend the monthly finance review committee meetings. I would love it if we would get to a point where those meetings were big enough that we had to have them in the pack, like Shalom Space, because while you may not realize it, that's probably the most important meeting that you want to go to every month. And we get very few people there. We are very transparent with everything that goes on with the financials, both operationally and with the project. And yes, it's detailed information, but everyone that's present, and they are open meetings, gets all of the detail you could want and then knows enough to be able to come back to us and ask questions. And I really encourage you to do that because this is complicated stuff. And there's a lot of rumor going around. And most of it is not correct. So it's hard for us to dispel bad information, especially if it goes around to a lot of people. But you have the power in your hands to get it right by coming to the Finance Review Committee meetings. So I want to encourage that. Dave doesn't talk so much about the financials on his weekly updates because he wants you to know where we are with the process. When we met in December to review the financials, we committed to you that we were going to do that at least quarterly for the whole group, in addition to doing it with the Finance Review Committee. So the next one will be coming up in March, and we'll do them more as we need to. We are at this point, the design is almost finalized for the community building renovations that will be financed with the 2025 financing. That's the first of two. The second financing will be in 2028. With the first financing, which will be debt financed, and the numbers are all included in the projections, we are only borrowing what we can afford. And that is what is dictating how much we can do in our projects. We couldn't borrow more to do more because we will violate New York State regulations, will violate our bond covenants, and it will put our financial position in less of more of a tenuous position. So we cannot borrow more in 2025 than we are borrowing. I know that question has come up. Why isn't Woodland Pond borrowing more? Because it's exactly the same thing as a mortgage and a credit score. So we don't use credit scores. It's not the exact same thing, but in our industry, there are certain financial requirements that we have to be able to meet for the New York State Department of Financial Services and in our bond covenants. And we cannot put those at risk. So think of it like a credit score and somebody's saying to you, oh, do you want a new Sears credit card? And they're going to only tell you, well, based on your credit score and based on your income, you can get a $4,000 credit card for Sears. It's not unlimited. We have to do the same thing. So what we're borrowing for 2025 is what we can afford in 2025. So everyone needs to be really clear on that. What we can afford in 2028 becomes more affordable because of adding independent living units. So those two things tie together. I don't have time to go into all the details on this, but the expansion of those level of details is exactly what's discussed every month at the Finance Review Committee meeting. So again, those meetings are open to everyone in this room and everybody that's watching online. And I would love it if that filled the room. What we can think about doing, and I'm completely fine with this, but I'm not the chair of the committee. So I will talk to Fred and probably the Residents Council, is we could record and air those meetings. But I'm somewhat hesitant because if you're not willing to put the time in to come into the room where you can ask the questions, I don't know that you're going to spend the time to watch it online. But I will discuss this with Fred as the chair and ask the Residents Council to consider that thought. Ina, somebody have a mic?
I'd like to suggest if you want finance to move to the PAC, offer wine, grape juice, and challah.
Oh, okay, perfect. Wine, grape juice, and challah. So at any rate, we're going to be talking some more about this, but the most important thing for everyone to walk away understanding is the Finance Review Committee reviews this in excessive detail every month, all the detail. You're all welcome and invited. And what we are borrowing in 2025 is what we can afford to borrow, and that is dictating how much we can actually upgrade in the first round, okay? I want to just talk quickly about a possible capital campaign. Nothing has changed since the last Tuesday address that I did, where I mentioned that it is still under consideration and it is not a fait accompli. We introduced the concept of finding alternate funding sources to everyone that was in the finance meeting in December. We had it right up on the screen and we said, here's what we can afford to do in 2025. And here's what has to wait until 2028 unless we find additional financing sources, funding sources. So to be clear, anything we're talking about related to a possible capital campaign is afforded, but it is afforded in 2028. Okay, it's very important for everyone to understand that. We began talking about what are our possible opportunities. And Woodland Pond has been thinking about in really formalizing a development function here since over a year ago in earnest. We have got one of the region's most well-versed individuals in the world of development on our board. Some of you may know her. Her name is Sally Cross. She was the former executive director or president of the Community Foundations of the Hudson Valley. And this is her forte. This is her bread and butter. She's very comfortable with it. She understands the pitfalls, the opportunities with doing not-for-profit development work. And she's been very instrumental in helping us understand what we should be doing, what we could be doing, et cetera. We have some residents that are also well-versed. I don't know if they're comfortable with me mentioning their names. So for right now, I'm just going to keep it to myself. But we have a couple of residents that this also was either their primary portion of their career or a passion. And they have also not been shy in helping us kind of think about what are our options with development and possibly a capital campaign. We met with, so we first brought the idea of alternate funding sources to all of you in December. And in there, we mentioned that 3 possible sources could exist, possibly. State grant funding, or state or federal grant funding, so government grants, private foundation grants, and gifts being a capital campaign. And since that time, we have more thoroughly evaluated those opportunities and have decided and determined that the state and federal grant opportunity for the 2025 financing is either very de minimis or non-existent because we're renovating an existing building. That will be opportunities more so for the new construction, and they will be primarily related to sustainability. So when we're constructing the new parts of the campus, accessing sustainability grants and things like that, similar to what Zero Place did. But we're not really doing, we're not really building a lot of bricks and mortar here. There might be some limited opportunities with some of the new additions, but very limited. Private foundation grants, and we talked about this, and I'll explain the next step in a second. Really not an option either, because we don't check a lot of boxes. We're not a economically depressed community. We're not focused on specific issues that a lot of the private foundations find to be sexy or important. And as Sally confirmed at our last board meeting, recorded, and I aired it for the Residents Council and the Finance Review Committee meeting, a lot of them have predetermined opportunities that they want to spend their money on, these private foundations. And it's not just anybody that puts their hand out is going to qualify. So sometimes their foundation is really interested in supporting the arts or really interested in supporting children or whatever. So we're not closing the door to that, but it's also not something that we can bank on. So that leaves us with, okay, what would we be trying to do with alternate funding sources, and what is the opportunity related to gifts? So we know that what we hear from you all consistently is these plans are great, but the PAC is going to be here. It's going to take too long for the PAC to be here. I'm not going to be able to enjoy it, or worse, I'm going to be dead. I can't wait for the new gym and the pickleball, but that's in the 2028 financing, so I'm not even going to think about it. We're going to have the new art studio, but it's, again, 2028 financing. It sounds awesome, but by then I'll probably be in memory care. So how do we deal with this? What we know is that if we had financing, all of those projects could happen simultaneously to the projects that we have planned, period. They could all start right away because none of them are contingent on anything else happening. So that PAC could get started on the same day that we start demolitioning the main kitchen, which is step one of the phasing. So we know that they could happen simultaneously. And that has some benefits to it because the sooner we do everything, the cheaper it is. So even though it's all budgeted for in 2028, nothing gets cheaper as time goes on. So we want to concerned about costs and things like that. It's all budgeted for in 2028, but if we want to protect Woodland Pond, this is a way to do it. The other thing is that anything that we raise for these projects doesn't have to be borrowed at all. So not only will it be less expensive to do because it's today and not 3 or 4 years down the road, but we're not borrowing for it, which means no interest expense attached to it. So for some people, that's a compelling discussion. And for some people, they don't care. And that's what we're trying to evaluate. And when I say we're evaluating, we are still evaluating. So after we discussed this at the December finance meeting, the next step was to talk about it in detail with the Finance Review Committee. That one that I told you should all be coming to. We talked for over 90 minutes at the January meeting. After that meeting, I invited the Finance Review Committee members for 10 to 14 days. I gave them to send me questions, concerns, feedback. I compiled all of their questions, concerns, and feedback, sent them back to the whole committee with appropriate responses. And then the next discussion was to go to our board at our January meeting and make sure the board was okay with us continuing due diligence on this. They voted on it unanimously to continue. Their discussion and vote was recorded. All of our board meetings are recorded. And I thought we really need to now engage the Residents' Council because we're taking this step by step. We're not just saying we're going forward with it. I am trying to use our residents as a guide. So we did the big meeting. I looked at body language. We did the Finance Review Committee meeting. I looked at body language. I listened to questions, and then I asked for feedback. Next, after the board vote, I decided we would take that recording of their discussion, word for word, verbatim, unedited, ask the Finance Review Committee and the Residents' Council to come and watch it and allow time for discussion after. We did that. Sally Cross was here. One of the aforementioned residents that is well-versed in this was glad to attend. We watched the board discussion and vote, and then we sat in a room for another 45 minutes or so and talked. People asked questions. We elaborated on some things. And again, we left that meeting with me inviting people to do 2 things. And for those that were in the room, feel free to give me the thumbs up that this is what I said. Someone asked if this was confidential, and I said something to the effect of, I have no expectation that this is going to remain confidential. Which is true. I did not expect it to remain confidential, nor was I asking anyone to remain confidential. But what I did ask was that when you leave this room, please bring real information. Please bring good information. And if you don't know the answer, please don't share it. That was what I asked. For those that were in the room, you know. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I see the thumbs up. Thank you. Literally the next day, there was like wildfire. This is Woodland Pond can't afford it. They're asking us for money because we can't afford it. And that was like the opposite of the message. So at any rate, so we're still in the window. That was, I don't know, 2 Thursdays ago. So technically tomorrow will be 2 weeks. No, it was a Tuesday. I don't know. It was a week and a half ago or so. So I'd asked everyone, take it back, think about this, schedule meetings with me if you want more detail. Give me your questions, comments, concerns. So now the Finance Review Committee has had an additional session to think. Residents Council has had an additional a session to think. And I have collected at this point what I think is everybody's questions, comments, etc. There's very few. Some of them were really good and things I hadn't thought of, which I have answers to, like, why didn't I think of the fact that this is tax deductible? That question came up. I'm easily able to answer that. And there are some other things. I want to thank everyone in this room that has been participating in this process and providing the feedback, because this is a new concept to Woodland Pond and not the kind of thing that we want any missteps on. So we are trying to do this very carefully and with the feedback of the large group, the Finance Review Committee, the Residents Council, and anyone else that has heard these discussions. We know that if we proceed, this is not for everyone. And what we need to do is figure out, how do we do this in a careful way that doesn't alienate anyone, but gives everybody the opportunity to support projects if they want to. One thing I will just confirm for you that we have decided, while there haven't been any final decisions made, is that if we do proceed, we are going to collect the entirety of the money that we need for each project, or it's not going to happen. So if we don't collect everything, the money will go back, because that's the fair way to do it. So it's going to be an all or nothing kind of thing. And we will go from there. So we're still accepting feedback. I will take a few questions. It's 2:40. Why don't we leave until 2:50 to answer some questions, and then you all know how to get in touch with me, and we will continue our thought process and due diligence on this. No hands? Mr. LaPerche?
I was a little confused on your last comments. You need all 3 projects to.
We're each one as of right now, and this has not been totally finalized. This is part of what's coming from the feedback, is we see each of the 3 right now as a distinct possibility. The PAC, the gym/pickleball, and the art studio. Our current thinking is that they will be fundraised for individually. It's not set in stone, but the issue is that we are doing this because we can afford what we've already slated for 2025. So my point, and I probably said it in a clumsy way, is that we need to have the money in hand in order for the project to proceed. It can't be pledges, because they can't proceed unless we have the money in the bank. So as collected, the money would go into a separate secure fund, let's say just for the PAC. And then once we get to the point that this is the total cost of the PAC, then we proceed.
And that funding is the members of the community here expected to contribute to that, because you mentioned that the other 3 possibilities are gone.
No, none of them are gone. Nothing has been decided. What we think of right now as the 3/4 projects that residents are continuing to say, I wish, are the PAC, the art studio, and this room turning into the gym/pickleball court. Those are the 3 things we hear most consistently. Nobody's coming to us and saying, like, I want the new dining verandas. So we've just identified the 3 things that we're hearing most repeatedly. And feedback has come from Dave's focus groups. We actually sent a survey out to all of you about 60 days ago as part of this process, asking what's most important to you about the renovation, what do you not care about? All of that feedback is helping to drive kind of how we're thinking about crafting this. But if you have ideas about ways it might work better, we want the feedback. And to your question of whether or not all residents are expected to make a contribution, the answer to that is no. As I said, this is going to be for some people, and some people will find it.
I think there's a misunderstanding. You might be referencing the other ways, the other.
Wait, Dave, can you?
Right. Exactly.
Right. So his question was more about the other methods, the grants that might be available for a ground up construction, not specifically about the three projects that we've identified.
Right.
So, yeah.
So, as I said, we have determined that there are very little opportunities for these projects for public grants, state and federal. Because it's really important for everyone in this room to understand that we don't check a lot of the boxes that a lot of these grants attach to. A lot of them are for places where the state and federal government want to see improvements in things. And we don't really, we don't fit because we're already doing pretty well. It doesn't mean we're closing the door on anything, Mr. LaPerche, but it does mean that we've been looking at this for 8 months, that a lot of those opportunities are not going to apply to this aspect of the project, but more so to the new expansion, which will start in 2028.
I'm really disappointed to hear that we're going to have to wait 3-4 years for improvements and expansion to the health center. Very few of us are going to be using the pickleball court. A lot more of us are headed to the health center. And I would like to see that as one of the priorities.
So that's a good point. And certainly the board has talked about this. I think, again, this is where it would be very important for you and anyone else that has this question to more fully understand the financials. The renovation for the health center is $30 million. Slated for 2028. And not only is it outside of the budget of what we can afford now, pursuant to what I said earlier, every single aspect of that renovation requires distinct New York State Department of Health approval that will never happen by 2025 financing. It'll take 18 or more months to get those approvals. So as soon as we can afford it, we will afford it. And as soon as we can get those approvals, we will. I personally think 2028 is a long shot. I want to see it happen sooner. So it's just a matter of deciding when can we get our planning board application in, what's our final plan for the satellite, and so forth. But that's too big of a project to be afforded with what we can afford based on our current, as I said, equivalent of a credit score. Rhea? Oh, sorry. 1 sec.
I'm a little confused. I want to make sure I understand. If you do go ahead with the campaign, if you do, you said you need the money in hand. So if you do go ahead and people here want to participate, and I know it's totally voluntary, it doesn't mean we can leave money in our wills. We would have to donate money at the time. Is that correct?
That's correct. Thank you, Ronnie, for clarifying that. And thank you for emphasizing the if, because again, we're trying to be very careful with this. And we don't want to have collateral damage in terms of the goodwill we have with the residents. There are a lot of aspects to this. So I think there's absolute benefits to this going forward, but there's also risks. So as with everything we do, we're trying to be extremely careful and get resident feedback as much as we possibly can before we hit the go button. Rhea?
I think it's important for us to understand how much money you're borrowing in 2025 and how that money is going to be paid, whether it's going to be something that we will have to pay or it's outside of this, because what I thought when you were talking about it is that there may be a conflict between a capital fund and how money that you've already borrowed may sort of interfere with each other. I think that some of the things like Ann mentioned, a pickleball court, And I remember when someone was talking about the pack and described it, and it was pretty elaborate. I mean, it was like a small Broadway theater, you know, in terms of lighting and curtains and all of that kind of thing. And I don't know whether a design has been confirmed for that, but I think that you can have some of that and do it like a black box theater, you know, do it really very inexpensively. And maybe it's one project that you should look at, or have somebody who has some expertise in developing theater type of places. But I do think it's important for us all to understand more about 2025. I mean, I know you're reluctant to give figures, and
I'm not reluctant to give figures at all. As I said, we talk about it extensively every month, and we are committed to doing it with the full group every quarter. I would give anybody any number that they want to.
Well, how much are you borrowing for the 2025 projects?
$23 million.
$23 million. Okay.
Yep. And that covers construction for the things that have to happen first in Dave's diagram, costs of issuance, which is basically like an origination fee like you think of. We have to pre-fund debt service. It's a requirement of tax exempt bonds. And simultaneous to the construction happening on this campus, we're continuing to pay our architects, engineers, and so forth to continue to design the health center and advance that design and advance the design for the expansion property. And the cost to acquire any land is also coming out of that 23 million. So I think based on your question, I don't want to hold anybody any longer, but I think that really getting that March financial review on the calendar earlier in March than later and encouraging everybody to come. We went through this in December, but I think folks are really starting to understand it a little bit better and might have different questions. So I'm going to, again, encourage you to come to the big meeting that we're going to have in March on the financials, and always think about coming to the Finance Review Committee meetings, which happen on the first Monday. I can take one or two more questions, and then I have to get ready for a 3 o'clock insurance call. Okay, if you have any additional thoughts, comments, questions, please email me. We want as much feedback as we can as we contemplate this and think about going forward. Okay, I appreciate you all. Thank you.